Hello, I'm Chris Auty, film critic of City Limits magazine, and I'm delighted that tonight we'll be talking to David Lynch, director of the $45 million space epic Dune. This is only Lynch's third feature, and his first in colour, following the Oscar-winning success of his earlier Elephant Man. But it's for his first film, Eraserhead, that I'm particularly glad we're talking to him tonight. I shall never forget the occasion back in 1977 when, with a bunch of hardened critics seeing the film for the first time, the end of the movie was greeted with a completely stunned silence. At the time, David Lynch was a complete unknown. A child of middle America, he was born in the mid-50s and went to art college in rundown Philadelphia during the 60s. While still a student, he directed an experimental film, The Alphabet, and then made The Grandmother, a fantasy in which a lonely boy invents an imaginary Earth mother to comfort him. In 1970, the American Film Institute gave Lynch the go-ahead to start work on a 30-page script. Eventually, 5 years later, what emerged was the extraordinary and disturbing Eraserhead. This weird film might well have marked the end of Lynch's career, but in 1979, Mel Brooks saw Eraserhead and, much to Lynch's surprise, cast him as the director of The Elephant Man, a moving Victorian drama in which Lynch's sense of the tragic and surreal brought unexpected life to what could have been just another weepy. His latest picture is Dune, an epic in scope as well as in cost, which took him to Mexico for 2 years with a cast of thousands. It seems that the strange dreams and nice manners of someone who Mel Brooks once described as a clean-cut American kid just like Jimmy Stewart have brought Lynch a long way. David Lynch is now certainly best known as the man who made Dune. But for me, his reputation still rests on the strength of his early, truly bizarre work. And tonight gives us a chance to find out if the man is every bit as strange as his movies. David, you've said in a couple of interviews that you grew up in sort of the ideal version of Middle America, where the sun always shone and there were planes in blue skies and so forth. I mean, can you talk a little about your childhood and your youth? I mean, was it really a happy time?
It was, as I look back on it, an extremely happy time. And the contrast with, what I knew as a child to, a city was, like black and white. And in a way, I want to make this picture called Blue Velvet, which is a story of almost an idyllic, world, a neighborhood, but under the surface, there's a sickness. It's almost the opposite of The Elephant Man, where it's an ugly surface, but, beauty within. So, but I'm thankful I had that sort of heavenly, beginning, because then when I see the cities, they have so much more power. And industry is so fantastic that just because of this contrast.
Because you started out, in fact, as an artist. I mean, you went to art college, you were a painter. I mean, can you talk a little bit about The Alphabet and Grandmother? Because they seem to have been quite, if you like, fine art projects as much as films.
Yeah, I wanted to be a painter all my life. And where I came from, in the northwest of the United States, it was unheard of. I didn't realize that you really could be a painter. I didn't realize that when you grew up, you could be an artist, because it was totally unheard of. And I moved to the East Coast really just at the right time, and I met a friend whose father was a painter, had a studio in Georgetown. And I became crazy, and I had to see his studio, and from then on, I knew it was possible. So when I was painting away, and I went to the Corcoran School of Art on weekends in high school, and I went to the Boston Museum School and the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. But I would make these paintings, and I would sort of hear a sound or something that went with them. Or I'd want there to be some sort of movement. There seemed to be a bit more of a story, behind them. But not a story, but just a little bit of something. And that's when, for an experimental painting and sculpture contest, I made this 1-minute film, which was a loop of film that involved 6 figures, and a soundtrack of a siren. And so that started it, and it was projected on a sculptured screen. And after I finished it, I thought this would be the last film I would ever do, because I said it's much too expensive The screen cost $100, and the film cost $100. I said, I can't afford to do this. And but a millionaire saw this show and commissioned me to build a moving painting. He called it a moving painting for his house. So he gave me a bunch of money, and I bought a new camera, a Bolex 16mm camera. And before then, I thought all 16mm cameras were the same. I thought the name 16mm meant a certain, almost a brand name. And I was amazed at how the prices were so different all over town. Anyway, I got a Bolex, and I set to work with this camera, and I animated for 2 months solid. And at the end of the 2 months, I took the film in to get it developed, and it came back, and it was a solid blur. Nothing was there. And I became sort of crazy and depressed. And I called this man. I told him, there's nothing there, and I've spent, a lot of your money. And so he said, well, never mind. Go ahead and make any picture that you want with the rest of the money, and just give me a print, and that'll be that. And so I made this little film, The Alphabet, and had the film I was going to make worked out, I don't think I would have won a grant with that. But because I got to go ahead and make something a little bit more, I got this grant from the American Film Institute, and that really opened another door.
Please remember, you are dealing with a human form.
ABC, 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 ABC.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, U, N, V, W, X, Y, Z. Now I've said my ABCs. Tell me what you think of me.
I gather that one of the films you're planning, Ronnie Rocket, is really a story of American teenage, or is that perhaps the wrong way to look at it?
Well, if I ever make Ronnie Rocket, and you could play back what you said, it'll be a strange teenager. But Ronnie Rocket is, it's an absurd comedy, a frightening comedy, but it's set in a 50s industrial world, or a couple of different worlds, and it's a film about electricity, and Ronnie himself is about 3 feet tall, or maybe 3.5, with physical problems and this fantastic pompadour red hair.
Physical problems?
Yes.
Does that mean going back to a smaller scale of filmmaking?
This Ronnie Rocket involves some special effects, and it's a lot of rigs. So it's, I think, compared to Dune, much less. Yes.
And perhaps a film that's less aimed at the mass audience and more.
Well, it's got some fantastic elements that I think people would love to see, but I think Eraserhead has some fantastic elements, and they haven't all been, beating down the doors of the cinemas to try to see the picture.
Yes, because the film was, in fact, rejected, wasn't it, from at least a couple of noteworthy film festivals?
Well, it was rejected from Cannes, but I was very sick, and I took the film to New York City from Los Angeles. And I had to take almost all the money out of the bank to get a plane ticket. And I borrowed a cart from this grocery store to get 24 cans of film and sound together. And I came into New York, and it was really cold. And I wheeled it down to this theater, and there were 2 or 3 films before I could show them Eraserhead. And so I went and got several cups of coffee, and finally, late in the afternoon, it was my turn to show the film. And the projectionist put it on and started running it, and I paced out in the lobby, then got my film and left. And it was about 3 weeks later, after I got back to Los Angeles, I found out that no one was in the theater. So, but I got rejected from Cannes. Then I applied to the New York Film Festival and got rejected from there. And actually, my wife, Mary, forced me to take the film to Filmex, to try to get it into Filmex.
In Los Angeles.
And it drove me down on the last day, at the last hour, and I popped it on the floor, and I said, it's been rejected from here, it's been rejected from there, and you guys are probably going to reject it, but take a look at it. And he said, wait a minute, he said, we don't care where it's been, and we are our own judge, and don't worry about it. And it got in.
What of you is there in Eraserhead? I mean, what is the David Lynch in Eraserhead?
Well, I lived in Philadelphia, and I call Eraserhead the true Philadelphia story. And I love industry, and I love factories, and I love smoke, and I love oil, and I love all the factory life and the factory workers. And I don't have any real experience with this, and I don't really know why I love it so, but it means something, to me. And Philadelphia struck me as this fantastic place because it was decaying, it was degenerate, it was filled with tremendous fear, and I just started getting one idea after another, and it was a fantastic place for me to be.
I was just, when I was preparing our chat, I was looking through some of the interviews and more particularly some of the profiles, and I was wondering what you thought of articles that, said that the baby in Eraserhead is in fact, a displaced phallus. I mean, how do you feel about that kind of interpretation being applied to your work after the event?
Every Eraserhead is an abstract picture, and it can be interpreted in as many different ways as there are people that will look at it. And so, because it's that way, it means something to me, but it's going to mean many things to other people. I just let them interpret it any way they want.
I gather that, for example, one of your next 2 projects, Blue Velvet, already has a reputation almost running ahead of itself as quite a heavy movie. I mean, is that accurate?
That's accurate, and I don't know where these ideas came from. Really, it started from this desire to sneak into a girl's room and stay there the whole night, hiding and watching. And it's gone from there.
Gone from there?
Yes.
Where to?
To Blue Velvet.
Can you talk a little about how Elephant Man arose? Because that must be one of the most inspired pieces, I think, of creative casting of a director to a project that we've seen in quite a while.
It started off with 2 writers, Christopher DeVore and Eric Berggren, who loved the idea and the story of the Elephant Man and wrote a screenplay. Jonathan Sanger, who later became the producer of the film, optioned that screenplay. And Stuart Kornfeld, who was working for Mel Brooks, read the screenplay, knew Jonathan, And Stewart told me about The Elephant Man. I read the screenplay and I loved it. And Stewart and Jonathan and I went to various studios, all the studios, and tried to get them interested.
And what was their response?
It was turned down everywhere we went.
Why?
Well, no one. They said no one wants to see a film about a hideously deformed human being, and that's what they said. So, meanwhile, Mel Brooks had read the script. It had been in his office and had somehow gotten home, and he and Anne Bancroft both read it. And Mel fell in love with it, and he said he'd like very much to have it be his company's, first picture. And he said, we're definitely going to need Chris and Eric, and we're going to need Jonathan. He's optioned the script, and Stewart can be involved, but, who's this guy, David Lynch? And Jonathan said, well, you're going to have to see Eraserhead. And I said, this is, the end of the road for me. And so Mel went into the screening room with Jonathan and Stewart, and I stayed out, pacing back and forth. And
but this time you knew there was someone in there.
This time I knew. And Mel, the doors came bursting open, and Mel came hurtling toward me and wrapped his arms around me and said, I love you, you're a madman, you can do the job. So fate steps in again.
That was shot in England, in London, you were based, in fact.
Right.
Why was that? I mean, why not shoot it in the States?
Well, there was, it's a Victorian, picture, and one of the, London, the mood, and it would never have happened. It would never have been the same. When I came here, especially at the Eastern Hospital in Hackney, it's Hackney, right? As soon as I walked into that hospital, I knew in my heart, or I felt I knew Victorian England. The atmosphere was still there. The atmosphere is so much here. It's incredible. So it had to be here.
Life is full of surprises. Consider the fate of this creature's poor mother. Struck down in the 4th month of her maternal condition by an elephant, a wild elephant. Struck down on an uncharted African isle. The result is plain to see. Ladies and gentlemen, the terrible Elephant Man. Stand up.
Stand up!
Turn round.
Turn around.